What's up, Steelers fans? Welcome back to another episode of Around the Burgh. I'm your host, Mitchell Wolf, here with my co-host, Shayne Kubis. We'll be recapping the Steelers' end of the season with their 42-21 loss in the wild card round to the Kansas City Chiefs. And Shayne, it's pretty much what we expected going into the game, at least.
Yeah, and that's why I'm really disappointed more than I thought I'd be, because I was hoping at the very least that they would empty the playbook a little bit or something, or just do something different, right? Because everyone knows, they know, no one in that building is unaware of the fact that what they've done all season, especially on offense, just has not worked.
Mm-hmm.
And to see them go out there and just kind of play it out
Yeah.
and just do what they have always been doing, it was just kind of hard to watch at times, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, that was really the whole game. Is just the offensive game plan was exactly the same as it's been for all 18 weeks. No changes. The only change you might be able to kind of isolate is that they did have some hurry up stuff, but then the offense didn't know what they were doing. There was a quote from Deontay, which I had up and now I don't, but basically saying like we can only go out there and do what we're told to, which I thought was kind of a very subtle shot at Matt Canada and perhaps Ben Roethlisberger. But I thought that was an interesting quote, considering that they seem to be kind of confused on some of those hurry up plays. So to recap this game, we're going to do the good, the bad, and the ugly structure for this episode. Just for explaining how the next few weeks are going to work. So today we're going to recap this game. Then we're going to recap the season in our later in the week episode. Then after that, we're going to move to once a week because there's just not as much content to talk about. And then we'll start kind of talking about the off season, what Steelers need to do, and how they're moving into the next season. But like I said, for now, we're going to go over this game. So we'll start with the good because, frankly, there wasn't that much of it. But the first 20 minutes of the defense, I thought, were really good. Incredible, honestly.
Honestly, yeah, inexplicably good, honestly, because that was the whole thing going into the game, was like, can we do enough on offense to keep the ball away from them? And then when they do have the ball, can the defense actually either create turnovers or just get stops, which is just so hard to do against this Chiefs team, especially the second half of the season. And for a while there, it was looking like, hey, maybe we have a shot at this if the offense could cooperate.
Yeah, and that's the funny thing is, like, the offense was doing its normal thing, but the defense was holding its own for the better part of a quarter and a half.
Mm-hmm.
And, so in the Chiefs' first 5 drives, there were 3 punts, an interception, and a fumble return for a touchdown in those 5 drives. Defense was flying around, making a ton of plays. You saw Trey Norwood make a play. Minka made some nice plays. I think, they were actually getting into the backfield on runs and on passes. The tackling was really good, which was nice to see. And this was the one kind of constant throughout the game, is that Alex Highsmith was just giving Orlando Brown the absolute blues for just the whole game.
Worked him like this. We talked about it while we were watching the first half of the game, especially like I don't understand his decision to move to left tackle, like vehemently say like, hey, I have to play left tackle, like, or else I'm not playing, type of thing. Because like I understand like his reasoning for it is kind of strange, but like he clearly is just a better player at right tackle. Like, he just is like, and you can't get around that. Maybe he'll grow into that role a little bit, but I just don't think he's a left tackle in the NFL, frankly.
No, I agree, especially when you're going to be facing more guys with speed on the left side. So
whenever you're getting those blindside roles, you don't want to leave a guy that can't stay with guys on that side.
Yeah.
So.
And like you said, like when we were talking throughout the game in the first half, really, like they really just needed to like muck it up, make it weird, make it ugly, and then ideally hope the Chiefs screwed up, and they did twice, really. But we'll get into this later. But honestly, I think that and this is the other good part, is the Watt brothers. Derek Carr has that touchdown saving tackle on the punt return, and the next play, TJ Watt deflects the pass to Devin Bush's hands, interception. Offense can't do anything with that, obviously. The next drive, they force that fumble, and TJ Watt scores the touchdown. I honestly think, though, TJ scoring that touchdown immediately, I think that woke the Chiefs up. That was, I'm not sure how into World War II history you are, but after the battle, after Pearl Harbor, and when the Japanese realized that they hadn't sunk the American aircraft carriers, Admiral Yamamoto of the Japanese Navy said, "We've awoken a sleeping giant," because they won, they literally won the battle, but he was like, "Oh wait, we didn't get the thing we were here for, so that's gonna be a problem." And then, a few years and 2 nuclear bombs later. And
Yeah.
that's basically what
So
happened. World War II and Steelers football. Those are my two things. So, but
fair
anyways,
enough.
yeah.
Fair
So
enough.
like after that, Chiefs woke up and they just absolutely destroyed the Chiefs. We'll get into that on the ugly part, but that's kind of what I thought of for that play. But I mean, the
No,
TJ
that's
Watt play
fair.
was amazing.
It was great playing. Like I think it, like you said, we'll talk more about it in depth in the bad section and the ugly section. But it kind of made them. I think that they were willing to kind of take things slow and not do too much at first, just because they didn't want to, force anything. But
Mhm.
then once that happened and they realized like, okay, well, this team can. We don't want to mess around with this team. Then they really opened it up, and we just couldn't play with them anymore.
Yeah, yeah. They took, in the words of Michael Jordan, they took that personally.
Right. Exactly.
And then another good thing, the final 3 drives on offense, once the game was basically over,
Yeah. Yeah.
Ben was just absolutely dealing against the Chiefs' prevent defense, throwing the ball pretty much all over the yard to
Hmm.
basically everybody. I mean,
Yep.
James Washington was the leading receiver with like 37 yards.
Yeah, that's again like it took until the game was over for them to open things up. And
Well,
this
I
has
think it was
been the
because the
thing.
Chiefs opened things up
Well,
because they
that's
didn't
true
care.
too, but
Yeah.
like they still just didn't like this has been a theme though. Like it's once we're down
Hmm.
big in the fourth quarter, all of a sudden they let Ben or just whatever happens because let him do his thing. And yeah, he's not like he's like this elite player all of a sudden once he's allowed to do that, but he's better. Like
Hmm.
he can
Yeah.
make things happen with himself, and he gets his receivers where he wants them to be. And like, you can just tell that the offense works so much better whenever they're not getting play calls in every snap. Like whenever
Yeah.
Ben just makes stuff happen for himself.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, and honestly, like a lot of people were saying, like, "Oh, this is like when Marino went out with like 7 interceptions." I was like, "That's not really different. Like, that's pretty different because this is a playoff
Yeah.
game, and you know, Ben's not playing well, but a lot of this isn't his fault, which again we'll get
Right.
into
Yeah.
later.
Like.
But like,
Yeah.
you know, the counting basic stats are pretty decent. 66% completed. If you adjust that for drops, that's 73%. 250 yards, 2 touchdowns. Like just based on those stats alone, you're going to be pretty happy with that. But I think the discrepancy between his passer rating QBR was like 92.5 to 15 or something.
Yeah.
So not making plays, but like he wasn't terrible. Just a lot of other
No,
stuff
he
happened.
didn't bury this team or anything
No.
like that. It was the team around him did it for him without him having to really do
Yeah,
much of
and
anything.
probably the coaching staff as well, or at least
Oh
the
yeah,
offense
for
coaching
sure.
staff.
Yeah.
Other good thing, impending free agent wide receivers. You have Juju Smith-Schuster returning to the lineup, and James Washington made a lot of nice plays in
Yeah.
what will probably be Washington's final game as a Steeler. Juju's maybe a little less, maybe a little more likely that he comes back, but they didn't throw Juju that much because I think they knew he was on a pitch count. But once they got Washington involved late in the game, he was making a lot of nice plays.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because like the way he played in the second half of the game, Washington, that's the role that he should have been having this year, right? Like
Mhm.
realistically. Now, obviously, he had his own issues. He wasn't playing as well. He wasn't separating very well, good stuff. But like that's not really his game. Like
Yeah.
it isn't, and I think it hurts him playing with Ben at this point because Ben is not the best
Hmm.
type of quarterback for him to play with at this
Hmm.
stage in his career.
Yeah.
But clearly, he had a role that he could have served, and like he had a couple splash plays throughout the season, like one of the plays that I was, we were talking about earlier that I was thinking about discussing, when we do the season recap was his touchdown double coverage against the Vikings that
Hmm.
helped get us back in the game.
Yeah.
Like he made some really nice plays at times, but he wasn't really given the opportunity to make the type of plays that he's known for at this point.
I thought I saw this tweet and I thought it might have been you, but it might have been somebody else that said like really Washington just came along too late in Ben's career. Like, because if you think about him, Ben kind of back in the day, like him just throwing up those deep contested catch balls,
Exactly.
that's good for James Washington, like that kind of stuff. And that's just like Washington just came along at the worst possible time for
Yeah,
that.
he just again, it's just like right now with the way that Ben plays most of the time, the way the game is called, there just isn't like any deep contested passes we do throw are pretty much all to Claypool half the time,
Yeah.
and he's just
And
not
they're just
great at those.
usually very
Yeah,
inaccurate
and they're
anyways.
not good. They're not good opportunities, so it wouldn't help him to be getting those. It's just like, just again, he doesn't fit what the Steelers were trying to do this year, and maybe he'll get a shot somewhere else to kind of prove he can be a decent player.
Mhm.
But it's going to be interesting to see what he does in free agency.
Yeah. Then the final good thing I will say from this game was Presley Harvin, who had
Yeah,
a great comeback performance.
really, honestly, yeah,
7 punts, averaged just under 50 yards on them. 4 of them landed inside the 20, long of 56. I think he had 1 punt that went out of bounds, but there was one that got returned pretty far, but I think his average hang time was like 4.15 or something. So, he was booming them. They were all like in the middle of the field. The one got returned, but not a lot of them were able to be returned very well. So, good to see him kind of at least get back on the horse after some personal tragedies and just kind of getting roasted by a lot of us in the media.
And again, admittedly, like, I'm not going to sit here and act like, oh man, I should have seen this coming, or like, oh, we were
No, no,
wrong
no,
to
no.
say that Waitman should have. But
Hmm.
like, he went out there and made it a non-issue, right? Like
Yeah,
he went out
yeah,
and ended the conversation because again, Waitman was great in his absence, but like, could he have done much better than Harvin did? No. It's just again, Harvin did his job very well. The return team didn't do a whole, or the defense on the return
yeah,
team
yeah.
was not great. That didn't help him, especially like you said on that long punt return. But in general, he did a great job, so he should be
Yeah, I'm
happy with
not
that.
not yeah, absolutely very impressed by his performance. So now move on to the bad, which is honestly shorter than the ugly, which I mean, based on the final score, that should make sense to you. But
Yeah,
bad, I would say, were Deontay Johnson, Chase Claypool, and I'm not saying they're ugly because they did have some moments to make up for it, but I mean, Deontay's performance in the first half really just kind of doomed this team from doing anything with multiple drops, a false start penalty. Um, really just killed any kind of thing they could get going on offense.
and it's just so disappointing because like we've seen the kind of player he can be,
Hmm.
right? Even last year, like when he kind of got you know, when guys started getting on him for his drops in those couple games that he had, like some disastrous games, admittedly,
Hmm.
but still, he still had good numbers. He's still doing well. And this year, he was arguably, I don't necessarily think he was necessarily a snub or anything in the Pro Bowl voting, but he was a very worthy of Pro Bowl
Yeah.
voting.
Hmm.
And it just kind of came unraveled for him in a couple games at the end of the year. And
Hmm.
it just is disappointing because I'm hoping that, again, it'll be an aberration more than
Hmm.
anything, and he'll continue to get better. But he can't be having games like this every year if he wants to get a second contract.
Yeah, so 2022 will be his contract year, so
Yes.
that's big for him. He can't have this stretch of 3 games.
No.
It's really been the last 3 games,
Yeah, 3
and
games
that's
at a
kind of how
time.
it goes. But like I said, he came back, made a nice touchdown grab, made some nice plays later in the game. Again, the game was basically over, so it didn't
Yeah.
matter. But it's nice that he again was able to overcome it and
Didn't
get his.
completely fall on his face, yeah,
Yes,
for the whole
exactly.
game,
And
yeah.
Chase Claypool, the bad parts weren't as bad. I think the drop he had, it wasn't the wasn't a perfect throw, but he probably should have caught it. He had another one where it was contested well by the defensive back. I'm trying to think if I can't really remember. There were probably some plays in those last few drives where he made some nice plays, but again, the game was pretty much over. That it
He had a
just
nice
didn't
slant
matter enough.
route for sure, I
Yeah,
remember,
yeah.
yeah.
Three catches on 7 targets for 25 yards. So again, no big plays. And just kind of an inability to really affect the game again from him, which was unfortunate.
Yeah, it's Chase is just again like they're using him in a way that clearly he just isn't good at. He's not a good contested catch receiver despite
No.
his frame and size at this point. And they need to, whatever the next staff is on offense, if assuming that hopefully they do pull the trigger on pretty much everybody dealing with the
Hmm.
offense, they need to get him involved more as like a slot receiver, a big slot player, a guy that can stretch you up the seams. He needs to be that type of player and not this contested catch guy, at least until he can develop fully as that type of player, and then you can maybe use him more in that role.
Yeah, I'm kind of wondering about kind of shifting the volume a little more towards Claypool away from Deontay. Because I'm kind of like, you think about Deontay, he's getting all these targets. Eventually, these drop issues come. And I'm kind of wondering if Claypool's kind of the opposite, where if you kind of like, I think this kind of happens in basketball where like some guys are like volume shooters, whereas,
Yes,
and I think Claypool might be that a little more, where like the more he gets the ball, the more comfortable he is at like catching it. And, I'm kind of wondering if that's the case with him, whereas if he doesn't get a lot of targets or touches, he kind of loses focus. And that's what leads to some of these problems.
I think you
Um,
definitely make the argument for that. I think the
yeah.
problem is like the way that Deontay's used demands targets, right? Like they
Yes.
they
Yes.
demand him to get
Yeah.
the ball a lot, and I think that doesn't help him overall.
Hmm.
Like you said, I don't think that build because it builds him up as like he knows how important he is. And
Yeah.
sometimes I feel like the pressure might be getting to him at times, honestly,
Hmm.
because he knows that like I'm going to be getting the football 12 times a game. Like they're going to
Yeah.
throw the ball to me 12 times, and I
Yeah.
have to make 7, 8, 9 of those catches if we're going to win a game.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if that's going to continue, then I think you could still have these issues at the end of seasons. And if you give some of that to Claypool and get him more involved on some of the easier routes to get open on and some of this other stuff,
Hmm.
opposed to just having to fly down the field
Yeah, and
half
even
the time. I
yeah, and
mean,
even like not like again like the jet sweeps, the end arounds, that kind
yeah,
of
all
stuff.
stuff like that. Yeah,
I mean I think they didn't really do this much this year, but like getting him in the screen game because he
yeah.
that bigger body, he does have like really good athleticism to get going quickly. So like just getting him the ball easily, where you can kind of build his confidence up early, and then again decrease the reliance on Johnson. Kind of opposite sides of the coin for both these guys in terms of their kind of I'm not sure. I don't want to say mental issues, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, their struggles with concentration and other
Yeah,
things that they
yeah,
dealt with. Yeah,
exactly. Another bad performance, Najee Harris, and again, not 100% his fault, but
yeah,
his fumble finally came. It seemed like that was
it was inevitable.
yeah, like that was just gonna happen. Like it was on the Steelers' first drive in the third quarter and first play of the third quarter actually for them, and the Chiefs recovered. It just ended it. Yeah, and I mean, again, couldn't really get anything going on the ground just because the line couldn't get any movement. I tried to bounce too many things outside again, and the Chiefs have better athletes on the second level, so they prevented him from getting anything. So, there's been some talk about like getting him a backup that
Yeah,
is actually serviceable this coming year. And I think that's an interesting discussion because I tweeted about this earlier today that the Steelers have certain benchmarks for their running backs, and Anthony McFarland kind of was the exception there in terms of
yeah.
size. They usually like their bigger backs regardless of ability.
Mm-hmm.
Think Benny Snell, James Conner, even Jalen Samuels.
Yeah,
So I'm kind of wondering if they cut bait with McFarland at this point because he just can't seem to stay on the field.
yeah. It's
And some of that was
unfortunate.
COVID this year, but still.
Yeah.
And they kind of go back to their normal well, or do they try to find another speed guy that can be an asset in third downs and give Najee a break there?
I mean, I ideally for me, like I'd rather have that contrast. Like if you want to bring in a guy who can do some of the same things that Najee does, just not as well, obviously, because he's not going to be as good of a prospect, then I'm also fine with that because it means that you can maybe give him a little bit more of a break than you would otherwise. But they need to do something, right? Like something has to change with the amount of snaps he plays because I do not want him to be done 3 years into his contract. Into his deal. I don't want him to be a guy that just doesn't have the same ability anymore after a few years. And we don't know. I mean, this guy, he's now he's a freak. Like he knows he might be able to handle it, but I don't want him to have to. Like I don't want it to be no other choice but for him to have to do it. So
yeah, because I mean, even if you look at guys like Derrick Henry or Jonathan Taylor, like they're getting like 70% of the snaps, maybe even 65. I think the next highest is like David Montgomery at 75. So
right, it's just
you need
too
to,
much.
and Najee's at like 90%.
Yeah, it's an insane amount.
Yeah.
Like it has to be at least under 85,
get it down to 80. I'll say get it down
at least
to 80.
Like
next
80
year.
is fine. Like
Yeah,
because again, he's going to demand the football, especially with a better offensive line. Like he deserves it, but I don't want him to do it just because, right? Like it has to be because it's the right thing to do.
And that probably includes the Ravens game where he was hurt, and like if he wasn't hurt, he would have gotten those touches.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Another bad thing, and I didn't really think about this because we were kind of podcasting during.
Yeah,
it,
we were
so
in the middle
we missed
of
it, but the Steelers won the toss and they elected to defer, which is very confusing given the very known ineptitude on offense for the Steelers. And then kind of just giving the ball to the Chiefs. I mean, it's kind of, do you want them to get it first? And I think honestly you would, because you're like, I feel pretty good that we can stop them on the first drive.
Right. To me, like in general, I'm always I want the ball at half guy. Like I
Yeah.
just am. That's just my personal opinion. Like I would rather, especially even if I don't trust my defense that much, I'd rather go and see what I'm dealing with on the opposite side on offense and kind of see, okay, what kind of game is this going to be, and know that I'm getting the ball at halftime to kind of try to change whatever momentum might be happening.
Yeah.
That's just, a personal thing.
Yeah. Like I can tell you, like with about probably like 95 to 98% certainty, the Steelers on any opening drive are not going to score a touchdown.
Yeah, at this point,
especially. Maybe 99% that 95 points in general. So I just think, and then again, the Chiefs score right before halftime. They get the ball at halftime and they score again. So just absolutely, I think that was a mistake, and that's kind of a retrospective thing. So maybe you can't criticize that, but it is what it is. I just thought that didn't go well, and it probably should have gone differently. So we'll get to the ugly now, and this is where we'll begin with the other 40 minutes of defense. Where after those initial 5 drives where they had 3 punts, of interception, a fumble return for touchdown, the next 6 consecutive drives were all touchdowns. And the last one was an end of game kneel down. So, you could say like every drive ended in a score. They got a big touchdown right before the half with I think like 14 seconds left, which a coverage bust to Travis Kelce.
Yep.
And it was the onslaught of onslaughts.
They basically almost repeated what the Bills did in their game, but only after the first 20 minutes. They pretty much just were like, oh, we saw what they did. Maybe we could try to do that. And literally just went 6 for 6. And again, like this is a team that this is the type of thing they can do, right? No matter, like the defense for the Steelers has its issues, but like they're obviously a very good defense, and it did not matter. Like we
Yeah,
just
like
did not have the guys.
if you had like the 2019 Steelers defense at the height of their powers, I don't think it really would have been able to do
It,
much
it
against
doesn't it
this.
doesn't change much.
No,
Because again, it's just the athletes they have at receiver, the multitude of guys that Mahomes can get the ball to. I mean, Jerick McKinnon is their third string running back and toasted
100,
us.
140 yards, something
Yeah.
insane.
It
Yeah,
just, and again, like it's not that he's a bad player or anything like that. He
no.
just has injuries and stuff, but he was making us look slow out there at
Oh
times.
yeah.
Like they just have speed all across the field,
Hmm.
and it's just hard. Like we don't have the most elite athletes in the world on the secondary right now, and if you
No.
don't, you're not going to keep this team down forever unless they make mistakes on their own.
Hmm. And I think, we talked about, the Steelers want to take away your number one weapon and force your lower guys to beat you. And that's what happened. And then also Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill got theirs. So it
It
just,
didn't. Yeah, it doesn't matter with this
yeah,
team
yeah,
sometimes.
yeah,
Like you
yeah.
can.
There's really no defense that could have stopped this team once they kind of, again, woke up after that Watt touchdown and decided, all right, we're going to play now. And,
Yeah,
you know, so that was just frustrating. I think the one other thing about that maybe we didn't consider was that, and this is partially because the Chiefs haven't used it as much until kind of recently, is their use of the screen.
yeah,
And Andy Reid is very well known as kind of the screen genius. And this is even before you talk about like shovel passes and pre-snap motion and everything. Just
right.
like
Yeah, just
the
screens
way,
in general. Yeah,
yes. And I think they really broke those out this game because they knew the Steelers were going to be rushing super hard with four, and not being concerned about the screen, and that's how they were able to get open so many looks. That then they busted those screens for like huge gains, and I think that if you're kind of asked the question like, would you rather defend screens or like try to get pressure on Mahomes? You probably say you want to get pressure on Mahomes even when you're getting it with four, but he is the best player in the NFL right now for a reason, and he just torched them.
yeah. And I think like the thing too that was difficult is TJ would, especially him, he would get pressure or have the opportunity to get pressure on Mahomes, but he would basically manipulate the pocket to allow him to
Hmm.
find space and get away from Watt, even if he
Yeah.
beat his man. And it took him essentially out of the game at times where he still got his for a lot of the game. We'll talk about
Hmm.
him later, but he didn't have the opportunity on plays where normally he would have been able to get to the quarterback or pressure him.
Hmm.
Mahomes was able to navigate that, or they had guys chipping him and coming late and knocking him off back, like all this different stuff, and
Yeah.
they targeted him, and it still only did so much, but it was enough to not make him have even more of an impact than he would have had anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of times, that like Chris Wormley would be the one kind of pressuring Mahomes, and he
Right.
just can't keep up with him
No, he
on
no,
a
he
scramble
can't.
drill.
Yeah, he just
So
can't get. I mean, Mahomes and his like pirouettes and everything he does,
yeah,
like it's just too much for defensive tackle or defensive lineman of his caliber. So
yeah.
it's tough.
And I'll skip to this one because I thought this was a little strange, and after thinking about it, I think there might be an explanation. But I don't really care if you want to run up the score,
Yeah,
but I'm just confused as to why the Chiefs would use all these good plays in the red
that
zone when they're
yeah.
up by a ton of points.
I whenever I was seeing these, I'm like, yeah, like this is stuff. This is good stuff. Like, why are they doing this to us?
Yeah.
Like, realistically, because I don't even like you said, I don't care that much because like we're
Yeah,
not as
yeah,
good as them.
absolutely. Like
Like, do whatever you want to
you're gonna
do.
score. Like
Yeah.
I am fine with that. But just like
Why are you doing all this cool stuff to us whenever you could be saving it for
I
the Bills?
so
Like,
that's what I thought, and then I tweeted that, and then I thought about it, and I was like, okay, well maybe the idea is to get that stuff on tape so teams have to prepare for it.
that's true too,
And
for
then
sure.
they kind of waste time preparing for these trick plays. Um,
That's part of it for sure too. Yeah.
because and this is a good day to run them because you are winning by so much, so it's like, all right, like we can run
If it
this, get
does,
it
yeah, if
on.
it doesn't work out, then who
Yeah,
cares? Yeah, it's
exactly.
not a big deal.
So and they just all worked, like every single one was
Everything worked.
perfect. uh you know
Yes.
the Mahomes, they had the diamond pistol formation. Mahomes was motioning out of the backfield. It's just, yeah, I mean, they're the best team for a reason. Anyways, as ugly as the defense was, I think you can make the argument the offense for the first three quarters was even worse, especially the
Oh
play
yeah.
calling. And like we discussed, it's just no changes. Players were confused. Ben wasn't, in terms of his decision making, wasn't great. He had the pump fake handoff, which was really the coup de grace of his career, if you think
I'll
about
tell
it.
you what, that play when we saw it, like, because we saw it live, and we were talking, I think still when that play happened, I almost didn't know what to say when I saw it. Like I thought
Hmm.
something happened, like something went wrong. Like
Hmm.
I honestly felt like Ben was like, "Oh, I need to throw," and then he's like, "Never mind, I don't want to throw it." Just handed it back, and I'm like,
Yeah.
"Was that had to be
No.
planned?" Because
Mm-mm.
Najee felt like it looked like he was ready to get the
I
ball
don't think
back.
so.
Didn't it look kind of like he was ready for the ball to
I
get
think
back
he
in
was
his?
ready, but I don't think it
I
was
don't know.
planned.
Like I can't imagine that when I say that, I mean, like, I don't think he was expecting to hand the ball back to him, but he was able to do that if he wanted to,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
The fact that that was a play call anywhere is hilarious to me. Like, how are you gonna basically double
Well,
pump the
no,
halfback draw?
no. I legitimately think Ben pulled the RPO to throw,
Yeah,
changed his mind, and Najee just
just give it
happened
back
to
to
be
Naj.
there.
That's
Like,
so
which
funny.
it like again, like Ben doesn't pump fake like for the sake of pump faking. Like he is
He's
fully
planning on
intent on throwing the ball
He
until the
doesn't.
last possible millisecond, at which point he changes his mind and is able to pull it back in.
I
And
know,
you
it's
know,
so dumb.
so this was not planned. This was just Ben being like, I don't know what I'm doing.
That's
But you
awesome.
know, we had the classic, you know, 3rd and 2, 3rd and 4, deep shot
Deep
down the
shots.
sidelines, which have no
God.
shot of being complete. And the thing about that too is like when they run those at home and they can get, you know, you're doing that on free plays, that's fine.
Yeah, because I don't
On the
care about
road,
that.
this is just stupid. Like there's just no good reason for it because like you're just not you haven't been executing this well all year. Like why all of a sudden is it going to happen on the road in the cold? You know, when Ben is at like you know the oldest he's ever been and his arm is as weak as it's ever been. Like it
You,
just doesn't
you're just
make
not
sense why
you're
that's the
not good
thing.
enough on offense to
No.
be taking chances with this, right?
Yeah.
Like some teams have the luxury of like we can take some of these deep shots if we think they're there because if we don't get the first down, whatever, we'll get them next time. You are not good enough to waste possessions trying to do this. You just aren't. Like
Hmm.
you can't guarantee the next drive you're gonna get a score. You
Yeah.
can't. And that's what frustrates me the most is like they play the game sometimes like they think that they're good enough to be doing these things and they're just not.
Hmm.
And it's just what kind of comes down to. And they showed that this whole season in this game, especially too.
Yeah, and you were saying this when we were still watching and like saying like they know it's coming on these third downs. I think
Yeah,
one time they actually threw it short or they ran it and it's like oh they caught them off guard because
yeah, because they thought they were going
defenses
deep.
are expecting the Steelers to take deep shots on 3rd and short, which is just incredibly stupid.
Jeez.
Yeah,
I don't
so
know.
offense was just ugly. I'm so glad that I hopefully never have to see it again. I'm hoping that people are going to get fired for you know this debacle in
People
the middle of
should
the
lose their
season.
jobs for
Yeah,
this for the way that this season went on offense,
yeah.
especially.
Anything else you think we missed in terms of talking about this game in this framework, or
I mean, again, it was just like the thing that frustrated me the most, and I mentioned it when we started, is if you're Matt Canada, right, and you're Tomlin, you're this whole coaching staff, you have nothing to lose in this game.
Mhm.
If they lose, which they did by 21 points, nobody is going to sit there and go, "Oh man, this was a disastrous result for the Steelers. How could they lose by 21 points to Kansas?" Like no one's going to be saying that.
Mhm.
So why do you not leave everything you have out there? I'm talking any sort of weird defensive stunt you can do on the defensive line,
Mhm.
any trick plays you have on offense, just anything, just doing something different on offense that maybe
Mhm.
you haven't tried this year. There's got to be something in that playbook that they haven't been
Well,
doing.
on that I think on that one of those first drives they did
Yeah, they
have
did
that they did
the
have the 22 personnel
right.
motion to empty, throw the quick out to Derek Watt.
Right, which that's not what I was thinking, but yeah, I mean, I
Hey,
guess I
they'll
can't
never
say
expect
anything.
it.
Right, like I can't say it was something that I've seen, so I'll give him that much. But that
they'll
was if that's the best you can do, then I'll be glad to
they'll
see you out the door here
they'll
shortly.
never see the speed out to the fullback coming.
It was so ugly too, and I'm like, I feel bad for Derek even having to go out there and do it.
Yeah.
I'd be like, why are you making him do this? He's not
Yeah.
Kyle Juszczyk. Don't put him out
No.
there and like just don't. It's just no one's happy about this. Like,
No. No.
it's,
No. And
so
yeah.
yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Jeez.
And then of course, like this is Ben's last game. You
Yeah,
know,
of
based on
course.
what
Yeah.
he was saying in the post game, based on what guys in the press conferences today have said, you know, all roads are leading that way. I think, although somebody said that Juju said something about trying to convince Ben to come back. I don't know if that's
Which
real.
here's the thing: if that is true, right? If
Yeah.
Juju's doing that, I've really tried to defend him for his entire career,
Hmm.
and I would love to see him back with in some capacity with us if the money is right and everything else. That alone might make me tell him he can go play somewhere else.
Yeah. Like
I'm just done with it, man. I am like I don't want to sit here and be like say I'm
Juju's
happy,
like, I'm
but
only coming back if Ben comes back. All
I'm
right,
like,
buddy.
well
See
then
ya.
you're not. Well then enjoy wherever you want to
Good
play
luck
next.
some wherever you
Go play
end
with the
up.
Jets or something. I don't know.
Yeah. Oh my god.
Like I just again, it's not that I'm excited about what's about to happen next because I have no idea, and we'll talk more about this in our as we go in the offseason and everything. Like I'm not entirely sure at this point what I think they should do, what they will do with the quarterback
Hmm.
position moving forward, but we can't do this again. Like
Hmm.
we can't
Yeah.
do it. It's not nobody is going to benefit from this. Nobody.
Listen, of all
So
people like ending up being Ben Roethlisberger's like best friend, Juju Smith-Schuster is like pretty surprising on that list.
yeah, I have to say so as well. Yeah, I mean, the dude loves him. That much we
Yeah,
know. Like he
yeah. I
absolutely loves
mean, just Juju Smith-Schuster just loving Ben Roethlisberger is just, the love story that
him.
nobody expected,
No,
maybe nobody wanted.
no, I don't think I necessarily wanted it, but I'll take
No.
it, I guess. But
All right. Well,
it's yeah,
let's get into our players of the game for the last time. Honorable mentions. We said James Washington. Zach Gentry had a lot of clutch catches down the
yeah, he
stretch.
did. He was just good this year in
Yeah,
general.
really
Yeah,
good year this year. JC Hassenauer had a really good game. Basically, no interior pressure against Chris Jones, which is very impressive from him. Like we mentioned, Chris Wormley had a great game. A lot of pressure, just couldn't convert it because he's not a Patrick Mahomes level athlete. Not really his fault.
no,
Montravius Adams was pretty good. Cam Hayward was awesome as usual. Just didn't really show up as much in the stat
yeah,
line, but he
right.
forced the fumble on the
The
that led to the
Wildcat
touchdown.
weird
Yeah,
play. Yeah,
and then Akella Weatherspoon was great because we didn't hear from him once.
exactly. That's all we need to know. Is he didn't get
Yep.
talked about.
Yep. No targets. So that's what you want. So I'm really hoping they bring him back. But let's move into our stars. For a third star, who you got?
Just because of what he did, and we just talked about him a little bit, like the fact that he was able to come back for this game and did have a couple first down catches and stuff like that, I'm gonna give it to Juju. Like I
Hmm.
said, I don't know if this is his last game. I hope it's not personally,
Same.
especially if the money's right for it. But I again like just him playing this game was ridiculous to me. Like I had no expectation or I didn't even think about the possibility of until we heard the reports of him coming off. I'm like I didn't think he was even able to come back this year at all, even if he wanted to. And then I see what happened with it. And then of course he starts practicing. We're like, okay, well maybe he'll actually play. And then of course he announces that dude's gonna play after doing what he did to his shoulder. Like just unbelievable for him to be back.
Yeah, and like we said in our pre-show, like we hope that would kind of spark the offense a little bit, and it did at times. 3 of his 5 catches went for first
Yeah.
downs. He did have one drop later in the game, but
Yeah, I
ultimately
mean,
they just couldn't really get anything. But yeah, all credit to him. Mine is going to go to Presley Harvin, and again,
mhm,
kind of for overcoming some stuff.
yep.
So I already said his stats, but actually his average hang time was 4.41, so that's a really impressive number.
Yeah.
Um, of his 7 punts, 1 went out of bounds, 1 was downed, 1 fair catch, 4 of them inside the 20. And again, like no shanks. They were all very strong, downfield punts that had a lot of hang time. So really impressed by Presley Harvin's ability to get back on the horse.
Yeah, great day at the office for him. Yeah.
Who is your second star?
Well, we're gonna end up agreeing, I think, on these last two
Okay.
because
All
they were
right.
the two best. They were the two best
Yeah,
players on
no
the field for the
question.
Steelers in this game. Alex Highsmith, again, we talked about the way he worked Orlando Brown, and like you can say, well, Orlando Brown isn't very good at left tackle, and I agree with you. But again, Highsmith just made him look really bad at times, like not even just the normal type of bad you might expect
Hmm.
from him. Watching him this year, just you could just tell like he can't handle the type of finesse and speed that Highsmith brings to the position,
Yeah,
and
and
it's just evident when you watch it.
yeah, and like even just like the technique he has, because a lot of
Yeah.
it was Highsmith using his hands to kind of confuse or deflect Brown's hands, and that allowed him to get around him. Had some ghost technique where he just kind of
Yep.
ducked under him, and obviously like the athleticism is a big part of it. It was interesting. He had like a post season
Yeah.
interview,
Talked about what
whatever,
he's
and
gonna
talked a
do.
lot about like he wanted 10 sacks this year, didn't get it, partially because I think he was hurt,
Mhm.
and just couldn't get there. But he said, I'm really going to work this offseason, like watching the tackles I played, like how can I get better? So, I think I'm really excited about his potential. Again, he kind of got hamstrung, possibly literally, by injuries
Yeah,
early
some
in the
injuries.
year. But I'm really excited for his future playing across from TJ. And he's like you said, he's my second star as well. 3 tackles, 2 solos, 1 tackle for loss, 3 pressures, 2 hurries, and 1 sack. And he was getting, like I said, just burning Brown the whole night. Getting that pressure on Mahomes. Unfortunately, that Mahomes usually would just kind of step up and have a
Yep,
big throw.
that's the problem. Yeah, so again, I can't blame him or any of the other pass rushers for that. I mean, Mahomes has just been really good at that, especially last year or two. Like he's really improved his ability
Hmm.
in the pocket to avoid some of these sacks that he was getting early on. So, in
Yeah.
general, though, again, Highsmith, like you mentioned before, a really bright future. I think he's the exact type of guy you want to cross from Watt. Because if Watt's getting all these double teams, Highsmith,
Hmm.
his technique, and again, if he keeps getting better at it, it's going to be hard to contain him one on one if he is going to get a lot of those matchups.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, so our first start, we haven't like written them all down this season. I think I went back and counted, like there's
Right.
only been 8, and like again, Watt has missed some games, so that's part of it. But I have to think he's our leader in the clubhouse for most first stars this
I
season.
assume so. Yeah,
Uh,
it's when in a season with the type of season he's had, it's hard not to be the number one star almost every week. It just is like
yeah. I mean, 3 solo tackles, 2 tackles for loss, 5 pressures, 2 hurries, 2 QB hits, 1 sack, 1 pass defensed, and 1 fumble recovery return for a touchdown. So,
yeah.
just, the 2 biggest plays like he made to keep this team in the game early in the game, put them ahead, gave them their only lead. And, once the Chiefs offense got going, there wasn't much he could do. He did get his sack finally at the end. And I said that's 23 and a half sacks over 16 games. So I think
I'll
that should,
take it.
let's just call it there.
I'm just gonna again, I'm gonna think of this season as a season where TJ broke the sack record
Yeah.
for all intents and purposes. I'm not gonna fight anybody about
Yeah.
the semantics of it, but at the end of the day, this was a season that he'll never forget. That hopefully we'll never forget for both bad and good reasons.
Yeah.
But he's the good reason among all of them. And he didn't disappoint in this game whatsoever. It's just the game got away from them, and the coverage did too. So, but he did everything he could on his end of things.
And I want to give a lot of credit to Andrew Wiley, the right tackle, because
he did a good job.
He held his own. Like I
really
don't think he ever really got embarrassed. Those two big plays were kind of odd plays where TJ was just kind of quote in the right place, but dropping back into coverage, that's not Wiley's responsibility. The other play was a weird play. The sack was kind of a later sack but again, there wasn't any time where Wiley just had him one-on-one and Watt just like completely embarrassed him. Like Wiley did a very solid job of making sure Watt didn't completely wreck this game. So props to him. But yeah, that's it. I mean, season's over. Thank God.
I hate to feel that way, but
No.
we've kind of been throughout the year. We've talked about it a lot. Like this is a season where we knew coming in it was going to take a lot for this team to be truly good, and none of it really rolled our way, especially on the offense. And we knew it wasn't coming, so we're just kind of happy to have to not worry about it.
That is what made it so frustrating, is because really, like for the entire season, like there just wasn't much to talk about because there wasn't a ton of change happening. There wasn't a ton to really look at. It was what it was. They were going to do what they were going to do, and some weeks it worked out, some weeks it didn't, and
that's about it.
It didn't really seem to be any rhyme or reason almost behind it. It was just almost random. So this will be next season. We're going to get into this in our next few episodes, but next season, ideally, it's going to be kind of a full turnover at a lot of positions, both players and coaches.
Yep.
But like I said, we'll get into that in our next few episodes. In the meantime, Shayne, let people know where they can find your work.
Find me at Shayne Kubis on Twitter as always, and also at Steelers ATB, where I'm going to try to do at least probably won't be tweeting daily like I was during games or anything, but especially if anything comes out from us, written or otherwise, and or any big news, any stuff like that, I'll definitely try to chime in on that there as well.
Yep, absolutely. Make sure you're following that. And I'm at Mitchell T. Wolfe, WOLFE on Twitter. So make sure you're following Around the Block on YouTube and Twitch, where you can watch our. I guess we'll be doing our weekly shows on those now, since we won't have a recap show that would be live. So we'll probably just be doing our normal episodes there as well if you want to watch it live, as opposed to listing it on a podcast form. But in the meantime, thanks for tuning in, and we hope to have you back next time.